Ben Kovacs. I'm an old guy who likes to do jujitsu as a hobbyist, and just okay at that. And somehow I've now, in the last 10 years or so, since I left working at Twitter and some other tech-related companies, I've somehow managed to make jujitsu sort of my full-time job between having a nonprofit, which started 11 years ago called Guardian, which builds schools and helps schools around the world have free kids programs. And now I'm the general manager for Flo Grappling, which is one of, if not the largest, sort of grappling organizations in the world.
When you founded Guardian, what problem did you see in the world that you were trying to solve?
Yeah. I'm not super smart, so I like to really simplify things, right? And I like to really like break them down to the base level. And I was living in San Francisco, or at least the Bay Area at the time. I was working at Twitter, and I thought it was crazy how much money we were spending on the homelessness problem, which was getting worse every year, on the
Mm,
incarceration of people in California, including younger, especially males and kids. And I thought, why are we spending almost no money on something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which can change someone's life at a much younger age? Wouldn't it make sense to invest $100 a month, let's say, in a kid who's 12 years old, instead of spending $100,000 to lock that same human being in a cage 6 years later because they didn't find a community and a sense of purpose and a healthy lifestyle? And so, really, that was the genesis of it. I had no experience in nonprofits. And I would say my personality is kind of anti-nonprofit in a way, in the sense of like all of like kind of the fake networking and going to events and begging for money. It was more just like, how can I just do this in the simplest way and like get it done and show that it works? Almost the way a software founder might build a minimum viable product, and get it out
mm,
there in
mm.
the world, not go try to raise VC money first. So, yeah, that's what I did. I found a guy at Twitter actually named Joel Lunenfeld, who became a really great friend of mine, who was the head of brand strategy at the time, essentially like the head marketing guy at the organization. And he actually wanted to start something as well, similar. I pitched him the idea and just said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this." And then he said, "Hey, would you mind if I did it with you?" And I said, "Of course, like, let's do it." And so he was super helpful in getting it off the ground and kind of doing that early branding and helping kind of, it's just when you have a partner doing something, it really helps a lot, right? Because it just kind of gives you accountability. It's easy to kick the can down the road when it's just you, but when you have that partner and friend that you kind of have to push and pull along every day. And so I think that was a big key to getting it going, was partnering with Joel. And yeah, then Guardian started a single academy in Oakland. And then during COVID, we sort of pivoted the model, where I always wanted to make it a global nonprofit that went into other countries and other schools around the world. And that's what we did. And so that's when Guardian, I would say, really took off from just having two locations at the time, one in Oakland and one in Baltimore, Maryland, and then became, a much larger organization as it is today, with schools in Peru and Ethiopia and Uganda and Mexico and the UK and Hawaii and Connecticut and Los Angeles and so many of them now.
That's actually insane. And I also didn't know you had a tech background, which is also interesting on that point because it's quite the diversion. It's not skipping companies to the next thing, which is what normally happens in that sector. So yeah, quite a diver. So in that sense, when did jujitsu for you stop being a hobby? In a sense, I get it never stopped being just a hobby, but when did that pivot for you that you were like, oh, this is it. This is now my life, basically.
I think a lot of people have really planned lives, right? They grow up, they go to a fancy boarding school, they know where they want to go to college, they're at a track to take over their dad's company or something like that. My life is very much the opposite, right? My father was a maintenance man at a landfill. Well, my grandfather was a nuclear engineer from MIT, and then his son, my father, was had me really early, kind of an unplanned, younger birth, and so he had to go get a job without finishing college. And I watched him kind of struggle and work hard and everything. And I grew up in a kind of a small working class town in Pennsylvania. And my idea of success was like, could I have a Toyota Tacoma someday that I owned, right? Like that was like kind of as how I
Yeah.
wanted to be when I was 18. I didn't have these like big plans of I'm going to take over the world and be a politician or a CEO of a Fortune 100 company. And so I kind of went through a lot of my life like that. I played poker semi-professionally after college, and then I got a job selling software in my late 20s, or my mid 20s, I should say. And that was kind of my first real job, I like to say. Then I accidentally fell into the job at Twitter because I moved to California thinking, oh, I'll just do this for a year and then I'll move back. And I ended up never going back to the East Coast. And I kind of, the same thing happened with jujitsu. I didn't plan like, hey, I'm going to start a nonprofit and then I'm going to get into a company like Flow Grappling. It just kind of all happened. And I've been very flexible. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing because I've been very flexible with sort of how I've done things in life and always open to kind of trying new things and not necessarily just like maximizing the paycheck. And so that part's good. But of course, I probably would be more financially successful if I was like really focused all the time on, one singular. But that's to me, it's kind of a boring way to go through life, right? Like I'd rather have a diverse skill set and someday when I die, whether it's tomorrow or whether it's in 50 years, be like, I tried a bunch of cool things and I had fun and I met really amazing people than just like, oh, I was a lawyer for 40 years and I retired with 30 million bucks, but I have no friends and, not a very cool
Yeah.
guy to hang out.
No, I completely agree with that, Ben, on that point. Yeah, 100%. And not only that, it seems like what you're focusing on, not only in what you're doing, but also as a person, as an individual, is the human experience. It's very central for you, and you go with the flow in that. Uh, Very interesting. But yeah, that's how some people walk through life. I'm also not a big planner. I try to set goals, but what is a goal, right? It usually changes anyway. Yeah, yeah, no, indeed. And then you get to the Michalsky flow state of mind and all that stuff when you get into the discipline of fighting. So it's a never-ending story when you try to strategize. So I completely agree on that one. Let's talk about Guardian a bit more, especially for people who don't know it. For instance, when you're working with these underprivileged communities, what could Jiu-Jitsu provide that, for instance, traditional programs don't necessarily provide?
Well, I think at the end of the day, right, we all want the same thing for kids or for humanity, whatever you'd want to call it, which is we want people to have clean drinking water. We want them to be safe. We want them to not be sexually assaulted. We want them to not be overweight. Like if we could just snap our fingers, we want them to be educated. I mean, we all want the same thing, but it's like you have a bunch of different philosophies on how you get there. The same
Yeah,
way that a far left Democrat wants peace and prosperity, but a libertarian will argue with you and say that's great, but your ideas are kind of made up and fake. Like they sound good on paper, but I have a realistic way to get there, right? And I think it's the same thing for what we want for the world. Like you can donate money to like the homeless thing I was talking about in San Francisco, right? Like I don't want to see homeless people on the street, but I look at this problem as more practical and I say, well, what you're doing of throwing money at people who already have a mental illness and who have already have a drug addiction problem, whatever, is not stopping or solving or even curtailing the problem. You're just actually making it worse. Whereas if we attack,
likely, indeed. Yes,
yeah, like we
yes.
don't need to wait until we're 100 pounds overweight to start eating healthy. Like, why don't we
Mm,
start healthy while we're kids and never get overweight, right? Like, that would be a better solution. And I think we could all agree on that. But as a society, we're extremely reactive. We as humans are not good at viewing something 10 years out and making the changes today. We're good at taking a pill to solve a problem today once the problem exists, right? We're good at locking someone in a cage once they've already committed a crime. We're not great at saying, let's just spend a little bit of resources today to prevent them from ever actually needing to go do that or drastically reducing the chances of them doing that. So when I look at Guardian, I think, okay, we all want those things. How do we get it? Well, by building these communities around the world, by building these schools, I should say, that create community, we create a central place where kids can come and they have mentors. A lot of these places are providing them food of some kind. There's someone to look after them. There's someone to talk to. So we're really like, in a way, using martial arts. Like, I don't give a shit how many Guardian kids ever win the ADCC championships. I hope they do. But if they
sure.
don't, I
No.
won't think the program was a failure. But when I look at what we're doing in Uganda right now, and we're about to make a big push and a big investment into making that school better, our focus is around kids not eating 2 day old food that's been sitting out in the sun like they've been doing, right? It's about having mats that are clean. It's about having a classroom where they can go to and have a space to learn. It's about having school supplies. So we're actually focused a lot more once the initial mats and infrastructure are there to do jujitsu. Then we're focusing on like, what do they need for life around that, right? And
Mm,
I think that's really the exciting part about what we do is we use jujitsu as a bridge to give you the things that everybody wants. And I always tell people, like, you don't have to do jujitsu to donate to Guardian. If you care about making kids healthier and happier and keeping them off the streets and keeping them off drugs, then you should consider Guardian, right? It's not about like you have to do jujitsu. Now, of course, most of our donors are jujitsu people, but yeah, that's how I see it. It's just we're the bridge, and we're the real thing for how you actually get it done.
I like that. Rational logic, Occam's razor, and you basically just hit it in essence. Yeah. Uh, How do these locations get selected? How do you get into these countries? How does this come to be? Uh,
So that's a great question. So I think I have an answer that will make sense to you. So I look at what we do as almost like a venture capitalist. We have a lot of people that apply to us and say, I have an idea. I want to start a gym in a certain location. And we say, great, what have you done so far? And usually it's like, oh, it's just an idea. I want to do it. If somebody would give me money, I would do it. It's the same way you wouldn't approach, uh, Mark Andreessen at Andreessen Horowitz and say, I've got an idea to build a software product. He'd be like, get out of my office, Whereas if I came in and I said, hey, I've been working in my mom's basement for 2 years. I've been cobbling together this software. I taught myself how to code. I've got 1,000 users now using my software. I need some money to make it better. That's when a venture capitalist is interested in investing in you. So it's the same thing for the schools. I look at schools around the world. I say we, Calder Powers, who runs our organization day to day. He does a lot of this work, most of this work. Um, we look at people, we make relationships with them, and we find out, we start tracking them. How are you doing? What's going on? What do you need to be successful? And if it's like, hey, I need money to teach kids free jujitsu, it's like, that's probably not a good fit. But when we find someone who does have a space of some kind and they're like, hey, I'm bursting at the seams. I need a bigger space and I need more mats because I have 50 kids that are applying to my program and I only have space for 20. Or I've been doing this for 5 years and I've grown to having 40 kids training here. I think I can go to 200 kids, but I need to hire an assistant instructor to help me out. Like those are the kind of places we want to invest in and the people we want to invest in. Because number one, we know that they have a good heart and that they were willing to do this for free anyway to start. So the reason is correct, right? We don't have to worry about this person's character. Like, are they just doing this for a money grab? And then the second thing is, it's a lot easier to pour money on something that's already slightly working and make it really work than it is start something from scratch. I don't want to be in the lease business. I don't want to be figuring out where I'm going to get real estate in Ethiopia or in India. I need someone that can do all that on the ground and kind of bring that to life. And they just need help and support on top of that to make it work.
yeah. No, that's impressive that you select them based on that criteria. It makes complete sense as well if you look at it from that lens. And then
And I also
how?
just add that we've made a bunch of mistakes, right? I mean, it's been 11 years. Like
Sure.
I've lit some money on fire a few times, like pursuing the wrong people and the wrong idea. And so it's taken a lot of years to kind of figure this out. And it's when you start the nonprofit and when you're early in your journey, you want to say yes to everything. But as you know in life, whether it's dating or whether it's, a workload that you're committing to or anything else, I think you know, you start to get good at saying no. You start to be more protective of your time. You start to realize that every time you're saying yes to something, you're actually saying no to a better opportunity potentially. And so we've kind of got to that place where we're like, hey, we don't need to like stretch to open a school just because we have to hit a number for an investor, right? We don't have some board of directors just telling me, hey, Ben, like, this is what you need to do for success. It's just slow, steady, what makes sense, what's logical. It's like running a business on common sense. And for me, I don't get paid to do this. It's a labor of love, right? I get paid to run FloGrappling. I don't get paid to do Guardian. I don't get paid a penny to do it. So it's like everything's kind of wholesome and it's for the right reasons, if that makes sense. Versus I think there's sometimes nonprofits that are run by someone who's using it as their sole source of income. They kind of have a competing interest, which is like, oh, I need to raise money because I need to make sure my salary is paid. This is how I feed my family at home or whatever, which is totally fine. I realize everybody has to make a living, but it definitely can create that scenario where decisions are not necessarily always made for the right reasons, or I guess a better way to say it is they're not always the most efficient financial decisions when you start to introduce those complexities and competing interests.
Exactly. It keeps it light, it keeps it lightweight operationally as well in that sense. No heavy structures needed as well. And what I was also going to ask, once you, because by now you've established what, 20 odd schools, if not more, worldwide.
They were at 34, 34, I
Yeah,
think.
exactly. So how do you keep track of it all, the progress, the people, what's happening?
Well,
Because I presume you don't have a huge team surrounding you on this.
no, we have one full-time employee and a couple volunteers. So Calder's our only full-time employee. He runs the organization. He also does our photography and our videography and our social media.
Oh,
So
wow.
get a lot out of like one person. And then, myself, I still kind of like run the organization almost like a chairman, if you will, where, I'm not every day working on it for 8 hours a day, but can come into certain meetings that are important or weigh in on decisions that are important, obviously. And then, with my relationships, including flow and different things, like I just know a lot of people in the jiu-jitsu world. And so a lot of it's like passing things off, like, hey, Calder, I met this guy at CJI, like, here's what he wants to do. Can you kind of run with this opportunity and see what's real here? So a very lean team, some great volunteers, but the good news is we've got a donor this year, actually. It's a guy who's actually, his name's Tom. He's the head of Facebook, and he donated enough money to cover all of our operational expenses for the year. So that would
Wow.
include our salary, our website, our legal, our accounting, our taxes. And so, just the basic things you need to run an organization, right? And he covered that. He made $100,000 donation, which covers all those expenses for the year, plus a couple grand extra, hopefully. And that allows us then to go to every donor that we get outside of Tom and say, hey, listen, if you want to donate $100,000 to build a school in Africa with us, $100,000 will go to that project. We don't have to worry about like, well, 50 cents on the dollar goes there because we have this overhead and we have this office space and we have to pay for our Wi-Fi and we have to pay for this. Like that's what most organizations are going to have, right? And you see some of them only 10% of the money or 20% of the money donated ends up going to the cause. So
Yeah.
I think this is kind of the charity water model of like find a sophisticated donor or group of donors that understand that you have to run a business behind it, that you have to pay for things to keep the lights on, but then go to all of your other regular donors, if you will, and say, 100 cents on the dollar goes to the mission. You don't have to worry about overhead. You don't have to wonder how much of your money is not going to the thing. And that really excites me because this is the first time we've been able to say that in 11 years. And I think it's just a much more compelling thing to ask for, right? When you're asking for money with an end of year giving campaign, like, hey, literally every dollar you put in is going to the thing that you want it to go to.
That it makes it quite the argument. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Not just that, it also because nowadays what you said earlier as well, I completely agree on. If you Google non-profit, you'll go crazy, and 99%, or dare I say, let's call it 90, is fluff. Same with eco spoofing and all that nonsense, especially here in Europe. It's insane because there's grants for it and big ones. So yeah, no, I completely agree. But with an organization that keeps growing like this, the numbers that you're talking, and you're still keeping it lean like that, I find that very interesting,
Well, our
especially with over
model,
30 academies.
yeah,
It's
I mean, our
yeah,
model really scales, right? I mean, it's set up to scale. I don't want to take
yeah.
all the credit. This is probably partially an accident, but when we're adding schools and we're adding this infrastructure in other countries, it's not like if you have the right leader leading that particular country or that particular school, there's not a lot of oversight for them. It's all just about selecting the right person and then allocating the resources correctly. So our model, just to be clear, in the US, we have schools as well, but
Hmm.
typically we don't give money to those schools in the US. We essentially create like a mini nonprofit. So they get their own portal within our app or within our website, and we allow them to take tax deductible donations through Guardian to put into their own kids program. So if you have a school in the US, you have a kids program. Let's say there's 20 kids training at Guardian Greenwich. The guy who owns Guardian Greenwich is a cop. He's an awesome guy, a detective, and he is a Marine. And he's like, I want to have a Guardian program for my community here in Greenwich. And so he can start the Guardian program essentially on top of his gym without changing much at all, letting those kids train in the exact same class as his kids where he has extra mat space. And so he doesn't need to raise a ton of money to make that happen, right? And he even turns around in that case and says, how can I help the other guardians that need more help than me? And so that's kind of our model in the US, is like allowing people to run with our model, creating a framework, a brand, a structure around it so people legitimize it and understand what it is. But then almost like Robin Hood, right? We take the money that we can kind of gather and raise in the US and what's left over from those schools, and then we can take it internationally where they can't fundraise in Uganda or Ethiopia or Mancora, Peru very easily, and we can apply that money to go 20 times farther in those areas and help a new community through the power of jiu-jitsu.
It's fantastic. You all, in essence, you're incentivizing rather than controlling the whole thing as an operation, basically as well, which enables you to keep it lean operationally. That's actually interesting. Yeah. So where do
Yeah,
you see this
like this,
going?
right? It's like there's no I think there was a while in business where people would really tout their head count, like, oh, I've got 1,000 employees, right? They'd be so proud of that. And I think like the world has really woken up to this idea that having more employees is no bueno. You want to do more work with less employees, right? So that's what we're gonna do
Yeah.
forever, as far as I'm concerned. Like we'll have to be bursting at the seams, and Calder will have to be getting gray hairs and not sleeping at night before we hire another full-time employee, because it's going to have to be like extremely warranted to do that, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, no, obviously. And yeah, if you can keep it that way, never change the winning team, as they say in England, you know. So where do you see us going then in short term, but mostly long term? Um, because it's very open doory from what I'm hearing from you. This could grow exponentially. The business plan seems to be solid, even though it's a non-profit, it's still a business plan.
I
You
mean,
seem to, have all the balls to go either way, keep it as it is or grow more. Or so where do you yourself ideally see this going? What would you prefer?
well, the way that I think about it is that we sort of have the jujitsu nonprofit kids community, whatever you'd call it, checkmated. And what I mean by that is I can't lose either way. Where if Mark Zuckerberg comes along and he says, I want to start my own charities and build schools around the world. I love jujitsu. Fucking great. Go do it, Mark. You win. I don't like
Good
go
luck.
spend a go spend
Yeah.
$1 billion and build 1,000 schools. And I'm stoked that I feel like by doing the work that we did at Guardian, we helped make that happen and showed that this is a viable path, and we won. The kids won, the community won, the world won. Or people say, you know what, you guys are really efficient. You do a great job doing this, which is essentially what Craig Jones and Seth Bilal at the Fair Fight Foundation and CJI have done, and say, hey, we want to build schools around the world for kids, but we can't do it better and more efficiently than Guardian. So we'll just give you our money, and then you'll go out and build the schools, and we'll work with you to do that. Right. And then, we keep doing what we're doing, and we just keep finding better donors, more options, more academies. I don't want to grow too fast that we start leaving anybody behind. And so a big focus is to build these things so they are self-sustaining. So if you look at what we built in Peru, we built 6 Airbnb units attached to our gym. We built a little coffee shop. So we built a weight room upstairs. So the idea is now, instead of us paying $2,500 a month, which we used to do to make this gym actually go, we put a significant upfront investment in. We built this academy that can last hopefully for the next 30 years. And now we've given them the revenue sources of Airbnbs. We've given them the revenue sources of having a gym that they can sell memberships to the local community, more mat space to start adult classes that they could generate some money from, hopefully, and then a coffee shop that they could employ the kids or the moms or whoever at to work at. And now we say, hey, listen, we don't need to send that $2,500 a month. We're going to repurpose that money to the next project. You're good to go. And we keep doing that around the world. So we're not like being on the hook for, oh, we built this new mega facility and now we have this never ending 30-year commitment
Yeah.
to fund it. We want to. And the cool thing about some of these other countries is they don't have the property tax burden that you have in somewhere like the US. They don't have the insurance requirements that you have. So there isn't a lot of ongoing expenses in some cases because you don't have the same rents or the same property taxes or the same insurance or the same utilities. So they can do things a lot more efficiently in those areas where they're, basically once they're built, they're theirs.
Yeah, sure. It can play well into your advantage in that sense. Yeah. So how did that come to be? The CGI Seth connection, Seth and Craig connection.
I think the thing that changed everything with Seth and Craig is they did charity their first year at CGI, but they did it by writing some checks. And they
Yeah.
did write the checks. But nobody really knew, especially with Craig's personality. Everybody's like, is this real? Is this a joke? You can never really tell with the stuff he does online of how serious it is and what's a joke and what isn't sometimes. So when they came to Guardian Peru and they saw it, I think the light bulb went off in their head of like, oh, we not only can make this difference and we can see these kids and Craig likes to travel internationally, which helps too. He doesn't really want to be in the US that much. He wants to be in places like Brazil or Peru or Mexico. So it kind of aligns with what he likes to do from a travel perspective. But I think what they also realize, and kind of our superpower, is because Calder does all of our videos and all of our photography, by giving us money, not only do you build a school, but you get endless amounts of content out of it, right? And for them, because they are a content machine, they need content to tell that story. When they just write a check to a nonprofit, they don't really get that same experience. They get a thank you letter in the mail. Maybe they get like one video that nonprofit goes out and pays someone to make, and then it's over. Whereas with us, it's just, I mean, you see like our Instagram and stuff, it's just always new content. There's always new pictures. There's a new school being built. There's new mats getting laid. There's new kids smiling after class. It's every day we have to pick from hundreds of different things we could post or could talk about. And I think for them, because they're so media driven and social media driven, that's really important, right? When they're doing CJI, they need something to put on the screen to show what are they actually doing. Like seeing them there is very hard. Like when Craig posts about Guardian Peru and building a school there, I challenge you to find a negative comment in the thousands of comments that go in that Instagram thread, right? It's very hard to knock somebody doing that. And I think that's the beautiful juxtaposition that he has, which is crazy, outlandish personality, sometimes picking online fights with people while at the same time doing this amazing stuff that's helping kids around the world. He's always keeping you on your toes.
It's quite the dichotomy indeed, I would say. But I find it fantastic. And indeed, the fact that you put a visual instead of a number is very poignant indeed. How did flow then come to be? How does that all fit in that narrative?
Yeah, just another accident. I actually trained with a guy back in the day briefly who works on Flow's content team. And about a year ago, I reached out to him and I said, hey, like, we're working with Show Your Roll, we're working with Sanibel, we're working with Perry, we're working with Craig, we're working with whoever. Like, how come we're not doing anything with Flo Grappling? And he was like, I don't know. Let me get back to you. He's like, by the way, you should apply for this position. We can't find anybody to fill this position. And I was like, okay, what is it? And it was the general manager for Flo Grappling. And it was like, I don't even know what that means exactly. But he's like, hey, email this guy, Travis. He's hiring for the position. And so I thought about it and I was like, I don't even want this job, but I might as well go talk to Travis because maybe it'll be a way that I can figure out how to get the Guardian stuff going with Flo, right? If he's the boss man and he's hiring for this
Exactly. Yeah.
position, then so I set up time with him. I talked to him. It turned out Travis was kind of like a player coach. He was the head of our wrestling division, and so he was the general manager of Flow Wrestling, which is a very big division for Flow. But he was also the boss of all the general managers in a sense. So like the COO didn't have to have five general managers reporting to him because Flow Sports is a big company doing a lot of
Yep.
other sports besides grappling, wrestling, cheer, hockey, motorsports, etc. So I really liked Travis, and it turned out later I found out he really liked me. But I think in part because I didn't really want the job very badly in my first interview, it probably also helped because I was just kind of like, well, why would I work there? It was almost like a reversal role from a normal interview in some ways.
He was
And
pitching you.
yeah, I'd say like, yeah, we were kind of pitching each other and feeling each
Yeah.
other out. And it wasn't like I wasn't there begging for a job. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
after he told me more about Flow, and I'm not a big research person, to be honest. Like, I feel like, even like this, like I'm doing a bunch of research on you and listen to all the old episodes. I'm like, let's get on there and have a conversation. Um, and so it's kind of the same way. So after I left the call, I go, wow, Flow's actually like a much bigger, better company than what I realized. Like, so then I started thinking about it a little bit more seriously. And I was like, wow, like if I had those resources and I could impact that change, why would I not want to do this? Because I'm already doing this with Guardian. A lot of the stuff is just the same thing, like communicate with people, tell them, the value and the service of what you're providing, be honest, be transparent. If I just tell people the truth of what Flo's doing, I think I could actually make the service better and create more fans for Flo. Because I think what happens with Flo is there's a problem where Flo gets a lot of blame and not a lot of the credit. So, for example, Flo has been doing this for 12 years in grappling, building basically the entire grappling industry up. I don't think Flo Grappling's ever really made it. I mean, certainly has made money at certain points off certain events or certain deals, but in aggregate, I would be shocked if Flo Grappling is like up 12 profitable overall in the last 12 years. So Flo's dumping tens of millions of dollars, let's call it $50+ million over the last 12 years into grappling. I don't know the exact number, building up athletes, paying people to be on these WNO cards, building up partner events like ADCC, IBJJF, Polaris, Fight to Win, and others. And a lot of people just would tell me when I would talk to them, they'd say like, oh, Flo Grappling, like it's just this one thing. They wouldn't even know what it is. Or they'd say, oh, Flo is just a big bad company making a bunch of money in jiu-jitsu. And I'd be thinking about it as I was kind of going through the interview process. And I was like, people don't even understand what Flo is. I didn't even understand what Flo Grappling was and why it was so important. And where it became really important is when UFC BJJ came along, because UFC BJJ said, yeah, we're going to be the new face of the jiu-jitsu sport, and you're going to like it. You're going to take it. You're going to accept our matchups. You're going to accept our rule set. You're going to accept our bowl. And I think, thank God, Flo is here because Flo could actually say, no, 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 there's an alternative over here. You don't have to go sign an exclusive contract with UFC BJJ and sign your life away for whatever money they're offering you or not offering you. For some people, that still might be a good choice. I'm not like anti-UFC, but I am anti this idea of like taking a sport that's growing in its infancy and telling the best grapplers in the world, you can only compete 3 times a year exclusive to our program, and you can't do all these cross promotional fights and other ways that would grow the sport and make it interesting. And you can't do CGI and you can't do IBJJF Worlds, or you can't do ADCC or whatever the stipulations are in the contracts. You certainly can't do Flow or One. And it's like, why not? I mean, it's fucking grappling, dude. You're not getting punched in the face. Like you could compete every weekend if you really wanted to and be fine as long as the rest of your bodies and knees and limbs are not hurt. So I think Flow became extremely, it was always important, but it became even more important and more highlighted. And you see the work that Craig's doing, actually talking a lot about this and trying to talk people out of signing their life away with these exclusive UFC contracts. And so, yeah, that's been a lot of my focus, is just trying to figure out how to take 12 years of sort of mismatched messaging and sort of unclear value proposition, and now start to tell the world like, hey, here's what we're offering, right? When you subscribe to Flow, you're helping your teammates get on these events. You're helping our partners get paid, like IBJJF or ADCC or Fight to Win. Like you're keeping some of these promotions in business or allowing them to sign the athletes to make the shows exciting. You're getting, behind the scenes access. We're producing videos on Cade Rotolo and Mika Galvo and Daisy Fresh and doing things that, help grow the sport. And for $12.50 a month, when you sign up for an annual subscription, it's a really small part of your jiu-jitsu journey to help support this jiu-jitsu ecosystem and keep it free and keep it open. So I think that's the part that's really been missing there. And it's been a fun challenge. I would say it's not easy to monetize the world of jiu-jitsu, especially kind of in this world now where everybody wants everything free. Everybody wants everything on YouTube. Like, how do you convince people that that's not always the best option? And so, yeah, I've got a lot of big plans now that I feel like I took the first like 4 or 5 months here that I've been at Flow to really understand the business and understand what works and what doesn't work and how the athlete relations work, because this was all new to me. And now I think we have a pretty good plan for 2026 and beyond. Like, I really think I understand what the future is of grappling and what it looks like and where we go from here.
Okay, now I have to ask, what is the future of grappling?
Jiu-jitsu is a meritocracy. It should be a meritocracy, just like wrestling. And unfortunately, what I see today is just a lot of politicking, a lot of the same people being surfaced for the same jobs. But yet you have this growing sport, as John Danaher said. It's no longer 5 guys in a blue basement that just beat everybody up and everybody else is 5 years behind. There's tens of thousands of amazing grapplers, or at least many thousands of amazing grapplers around the world that are getting very close to the top, like that are being separated now by inches. And I think that what I would like to see is a way to bring those new stars to light for people to understand what they need to do to qualify for that next step. I would like to see bigger events when we do them. I don't think the world needs more jiu-jitsu events. I think it needs more curated, higher stakes events. I think that's why something like a CJI or an ADCC is so powerful, because it only happens, once a year or every other year. So you can really focus on it and promote it and do everything around it. I don't think people would feel as excited if CJI was monthly, right? I don't think they'd feel as
No?
excited if ADCC happened every quarter. So ADCC Worlds, I mean. But yeah, I mean, those are some of the things I want to see. It's almost like a barbell approach, like get out of the middle, do bigger events that are more impactful and more interesting on one side, while creating ways for people on the front end, whether they're kids or whether they're 60-year-old adult masters competitors, to have a clear path of understanding what's going on the participatory side to get over to the other side of the barbell. Everything in the middle to me is just a big jumbled mess that I don't want to be in.
If you see it growing that fast and everything, how do you keep that lean perspective, that line perspective? Because we're talking millions, you're talking heavy business. Indeed, you're not talking five guys in a basement.
I don't know. I don't put on much of a filter too much. um I don't crave the spotlight. I don't care either way. I think that's the way I would say it, is like, if you stick a camera in front of my face, I'm happy to talk. I'm not like anti being on the camera or talking or having a personality, but I also don't crave it. I think that I have a sort of a weird obsession, or a hobby, I guess you would say, not an obsession, with like old mafia lore. So I listen to a lot of like podcasts on the old mafia golden days and things like that. It's sort of how I fall asleep at night, right? It's like my little habit. And I've always found the most interesting people in those stories, like the silent godfathers, right? The people who move the chess pieces around behind the scenes, and they had control over that chessboard, but nobody knew who they were until they were already gone. And I think that the most powerful people usually are the people who say the least, who aren't necessarily on the front lines. And, if I could have something in jujitsu, or have a kind of my personality or my way in jujitsu, if I had to choose it, it would be to like mostly be like that, right? To like be the person strategizing behind the scenes and trying to move the chess pieces around to have the most chance of success, right? And to like change the game on the field every day, or play the game on the field as it evolves every day. And I think it's extra fun because when you're playing a chess game against someone like the UFC, they have essentially unlimited money, right? They have a $20 billion balance sheet. They, in theory, should win everything that they get into. But we all know this in startups and the world of business. Oftentimes, it's a smaller, more nimble group of people, or entrepreneur, or whatever it is, who can figure that out and can beat the bigger incumbent and cause them a lot of problems. Not always incumbent, just the other company. And so, yeah, I view it as kind of a challenge, a fun challenge. And I have my kids, I have my wife. I have a great wife who has a great job. I have two healthy kids, 8 and 13 years old. And so I think that, unlike a lot of maybe these 22-year-old meme creators on Instagram and stuff, who are trying to figure out who they are, and their personality is really derived from their Instagram presence or their YouTube channel. Mine really isn't. Like, I have my thing already. I have my nonprofit that I'm super proud of. I've got my parents, I've got my kids, I've got my wife. Like, I don't need jujitsu to be my everything. I don't need my personality to be wrapped up in my jujitsu accomplishments or flow grappling success. So if it happens and flow grappling ends up just dominating the grappling world and kicking everybody's butt that they're competing against, and like becomes a de facto platform of where like no one would want to be anywhere else but flow grappling, then that's great. But if it doesn't work out that way, it's also going to be okay, right? So I think it gives me better flexibility to make decisions for the right reasons, and to not worry about things that aren't important, if that makes sense, because like I've got the
Yeah,
importance locked down. Now this is just a fun game that I play every day to try to win.
super cool and nice, very nice, eloquent answer. Um, Last question for you. Guardian, what's the biggest smile that you've ever had on your face through Guardian?
Man, we've got so many stories now. I'll tell a couple stories, or a couple things that have happened, just to show how impactful it is. I don't know if they brought a smile to my face, more like a thank God, but we found out that one of our earliest students that came to Guardian, he was probably 100 pounds overweight. Maybe he was 14 or 15 years old at the time, 16. I don't even remember. He kind of just like hung around the gym, and he wasn't really a great student. He never really got in that great of shape, but he just kind of kept coming because of the community. And today he actually works at a jiu-jitsu gym. He actually competes in jiu-jitsu tournaments. He's brown belt or purple belt now. He's lost all that weight. He has a girlfriend, and we found out later that he was 1 week away from joining a gang when he came to Guardian. So he ended up joining Guardian instead of joining a gang. And I'll just say this kid wasn't built for the gang life. Like he would have for sure been killed quickly, right? Or hurt. Um, so that was pretty impactful. We had another kid who was coming to Guardian for a long time, one of our schools, and then he left and his mom called and she said, or we reached out to his mom one day and said, why isn't he coming anymore? And she said, I don't know. Like, I'm going to make sure he gets in there the next day though, because I need him. He needs to go back that day after class. He did come the next day, like his mom promised. That day after class, he got a call from a friend and found out that the three kids he was supposed to be hanging out with that day all got shot on the street corner. And one of them died. One of them went to the hospital. I forget what happened to the other one, but he would have been with them and got shot most likely. But he came to class that day. So, I mean, I think that's what we don't understand in life is like kind of that opportunity cost or that alternative reality of what would have happened if these kids didn't have a place. It's just hard to say because you don't know like, wow, if I was at the gym that day, I would have been doing this other thing. You don't really think about it like that. You have to look back on it later and think, oh my God, or see that horrible thing happen. So those are like real, like kind of, I would say like life-saving stories. And then we just have a lot of just happiness stories, right? Kids who are happier, kids who are bullied. One in Peru that's really cool is we had a kid named Anderson who um, he's crippled. He's a little bit crippled where he can't have full use of everything. So he was getting horribly bullied in school. I mean, 12-year-old kids aren't the friendliest, especially in a place like that, right? There's not as much of like a DEI culture or whatever you would call it down there. So he was getting bullied. He started coming to class. He actually started gaining more faculties, right, by coming to class and participating in jiu-jitsu. But more importantly, he made friends with all the kids at jiu-jitsu because now he's one of their training partners. So when he was getting bullied at school, they were like, he ain't getting bullied anymore. So now you got like a little army of 50 kids who are looking out for each other, right? Or 80 kids at school who are like, they're not letting their training partners get bullied at school. So that's a cool story. And we have his mom on camera kind of talking about, crying, talking about how much, it changed his life. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. And I'm sure, honestly, I don't even know half of the stories, right? Because it's just happening every day. It's not like I get a report from every school every day saying, hey, look at how happy this kid was coming to class today. So, I mean, it's really crazy. From the big stuff, the life-saving stuff to just like, I don't want to say small stuff, but things like the story I just told you.
Wow, no, that's fantastic. The story behind the Guardian is something that's, you can't really narrate that into a documentary. You could obviously, but it would be a lot of work for Calder
Yeah.
Expo.
Yeah, we joke.
But
Seth and I actually joke about that. Seth from CGI, Bilal, we joke about that a lot. Like the documentary they're gonna make someday because we're always laughing that we're, two guys in our 40s who aren't that great at jiu-jitsu, who have kids and have wives and have families, and somehow we figured out how to like navigate our way into sort of the center of the sport. I don't think I've ever seen somebody more committed to his family than Seth. He's like every time I talk to him, it's like, how can I help these kids at these schools? How can I leave a legacy for my kids? And how can I spend more time with my wife and my kids and be a better dad? Because he didn't have like kind of the most nostalgic, I don't know what the word is, upbringing growing up with his situation. So I think he really values the idea of being there for his kids and like he's willing to, especially post CJI, shut it down for months to get back in that state of being a father and a husband first. So I have a lot of
oh
respect
no,
for
yeah, yeah, and one should. No, super cool, Ben, super cool. I'm also gonna see, but I can't promise. But if you guys are interested, our charity could do a small donation to you guys, so it won't be the big money, Facebook money, but it'll probably be a 1K or maybe something along those lines. So if that helps, we'd be very happy to do so.
that would
Um,
be amazing. I mean, I
yeah.
think due to our efficiency now, right, of what we're doing in the scale, like, it varies location to location, but it's about $20 to $25 a month is on average what it costs to have a kid in our program, right? And
Wow.
it's not
Yeah.
add a new kid, it costs $25, but when you take it in aggregate, right, of the money going out versus how many kids we have in the program. So, in theory, $1,000 is sponsoring 3 or 4 kids into a program for the year. So it's a, I don't consider that small money. I consider that helping 3 or 4 kids.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know it could have that much impact. Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. Well, I think it's morning still there. Here it's evening. So you have a lovely day, sir. Have a
Have a
good
great
one,
night.
Ben.